Hi, my name's Hayley Quinn, and welcome back to the mini-series that I've created especially to celebrate the launch of Dating OS, my awesome new program. Now, in this video, I'm going to be teaching you some few principles from what I call conversation tech. You might have heard me mention that before. The goal of conversation tech is to get you to look at conversation skills differently. So if you find that you're running out of stuff to say, your conversations get kind of boring, or you drift into conversational death, which is asking too many questions, this is the video that you need to pay attention to. Now, I'm just going to teach you a very, very simple skill for how to respond to a woman's answers in a way that's kind of a bit more imaginative and creative. Because remember, women aren't there judging whether everything you say is 100% accurate. What she's aware of is how she feels in your company. So she should be thinking, wow, this guy is really individual and really unique and really interesting. And the problem is most men in conversations play the conversation so safe because they don't want to risk screwing it up, that they actually never say anything that's interesting and original enough that makes her compelled to want to get to know you better. So remember, the point of a conversation is twofold. One, it has to be about you expressing your individuality and who you are. Because otherwise, how is she going to know how you're so different from all of the other guys that she could meet? Secondly, the second purpose of the conversation, and any women who are watching this video are going to be supportive of this, is it's to understand who she is as a person. It's not to try and get through 5 minutes of conversation so it is okay to ask for her phone number. You should be actively listening to her and thinking about, how, from what she's saying and how she's responding, what is this telling me about who she is as a person? So we're going to take something extremely simple, and I'm going to show you 3 ways that you can more creatively respond to this, and in a way that's going to be far more engaging than just asking a series of logical and boring questions. What we're going to be looking at as a topic of conversation is where she's from, because that always comes up, right? Like work, where someone's from, kind of what they do. This is a topic of conversation you're going to be hitting all the time. Now, I want you to be able to handle this topic of conversation in a way that is different from how she's going to be used to being responded to. Now, when a girl says where she's from, there's only 3 variables that could possibly happen here, right? 1, you know where she's from in detail because you live there too, or you've visited there recently and have very specific memories of it. Variable 2, option 2, you have never visited and you've never physically been there, but you have kind of an impression of what that place might look like in your mind. It's like if someone says Paris, even if you haven't visited Paris, most of us will have an image of it that comes into our brains. Point 3, you might possibly have never ever heard of where she's from. So there's only 3 routes the conversation can ever go down at this stage, and with each of those routes, I'm going to be giving you a better way to respond than just simply asking another question. So let's take the first one, which is option number 1, you have detailed knowledge of where she's from. This means that you either live in the same place or you visited. In this case, the best thing that you can do is actually go to a specific memory. So instead of asking her another question, we actually want you to share information about yourself. So say she says she's from New York and you visited New York a few months ago. You would say something along the lines of, oh, that's really cool, I visited New York quite recently. Now at this point, the phrase that you need to use next is, and the best memory I had there was, or the craziest time I had in New York, or the one thing that really always reminds me of New York is this. Now you use those phrases because you want to zero in on a very specific memory and detail. This will enable you to tell a story and an anecdote which is interesting for her to hear. If you said, oh, I was in New York 3 months ago and I stayed in the Lower East Side and I was there for about 10 days, that's really uncharismatic, that's boring, that's a bunch of facts, it's hard to relate to. If you said, I was in New York a few months ago and the craziest memory I had, and the thing that always reminds me of New York, is this one night when I was walking down Bleecker Street and this man came up to me and blah, blah, blah. Now, by going to a specific story, you do a couple of things. 1, whenever we go to a specific memory, we become more animated. So you're going to find that your non-verbal signals, your eye contact, your vocal tonality, your facial expression is just going to be better. Secondly, specific stories are much more relatable. If you start talking in terms of facts, like numbers, like amount of days spent, how long, how far, the conversation becomes dry and runs out really quickly. Once you get into exchanging memories, you actually find that, let's think about this a second, you have a lot of memories. You're not going to run out of that store of information. Now, I understand that you might be thinking, well, why does she want to know about me? But what you have to understand is, by you sharing that specific memory with her and opening up, you're actually setting the tone of the conversation and giving her permission that she can speak to you that openly too. So it's not actually about you being boastful or self-indulgent. Instead, what it's about is saying, hey, we can talk to each other on this level, and moving the conversation to a space where she feels she can talk to you openly too. Second route that might happen, you might have never been or never heard of something. You've heard of it, but you've never been there. So you have kind of a little bit of a reference point. In that case, I want you to use the phrase, I imagine. Now, I imagine is such a useful phrase for you just to bank. It's like one of those other ones, like my best experience there was. I imagine. Because what you're saying here is you're taking ownership of it. You're just giving your opinion, and you're actually very safe in a conversation when you're giving your opinion. You're not saying it is. You're saying, this is how I imagine it to be. The imagine also asks her to create a visual memory. So again, it's a much more creative and interesting form of conversation. It also allows you, even if you don't have much factual knowledge, to give your opinion on something pretty freely. And the good news is, again, she's not testing you for how accurate what you say is. She'll be responding to how unique you seem, how comfortable you seem, and how friendly and open you are. So if you say something along the lines of, she says, oh, I'm from Paris, and you've never visited Paris, but you could say, oh, Paris, I've never actually visited there, but from seeing it in all the movies, I kind of imagine it to be like really overly romantic, lots of bridges, lots of people in those blue and white striped tops cycling along, lots of great red wine, Eiffel Tower. I can just see you walking by the Eiffel Tower in one of those blue and white striped tops. Maybe you've got a bicycle there and you've got like a baguette in your handbag. Now, it's silly. It might be a bit cliched. It's kind of over the top, but it's much more creative and interesting. So if you can say, I imagine, and you actually describe a scene of her being in her hometown or her native city or her home country, and you can imagine her going about her daily business, it's very inviting to her because the conversation is now focused on her and who she is. So it's going to be very rewarding for her to listen to. Also, even if you kind of like say some things that are a bit silly, that actually only makes the conversation better because she's going to be prompted to correct you and tell you which parts of your imaginary vision of her city are right and which bits are wrong. So it also, by being creative, it gives you a lot more license to talk very freely, and you don't have to stick to the rigid facts of what you know, which might run out very quickly. Now, point 3, what if you have never, ever, ever heard of where she's from? And this does happen. It can also happen with other topics of conversation. Something might come up and you literally have no opinion on it because you've never heard of it and you don't know what someone's talking about. Instead of pretending that you know, it's so much better to say, you know what, I actually have never heard of that place. I needed to obviously study harder in geography. Now, instead, I'm actually from X, and let me tell you something about it. So you've done something really clever there. First of all, you've held your hands up and said, I actually know nothing about this. So you're not going to get caught out. If you try and pretend you know something about something you don't know about, it's obvious, and it'll just seem like you're trying to do that to impress her. Instead, it's so much better to say, I don't have any idea. Now, to move her to a place where she feels comfortable to tell you more about it, what in fact you want to do is you want to say, but let me tell you, I'm actually from here. Let me tell you about it. So do you hear that the conversational style here is very direct? You're directing the flow of the conversation. You're saying, I don't know about your thing, but this is my thing, and I can tell you some interesting details about where I'm from. Again, here you are using the conversation tech to return to a topic that you feel comfortable and secure talking about. So you should be able to talk to her about your hometown. Again, just like with the first variable, you want to give a specific memory. You want to tell her one thing, maybe the one thing that really summarizes where you're from, what it would be like if she visited there, the last time you visited, what was the best thing that happened. And remember, again, by sharing this memory with her of your hometown, you're not being boastful, you're not dominating the conversation, you're actually sharing enough information so that trust is built and she feels comfortable to tell you more details about where she's from. So let's look at those three options quickly again. If a woman tells you where she's from, you really only have three things that could happen. You're either going to know it really well, have never visited but have an impression of it, or have no idea. With each of those variables, the best routes to go are as follows. If you've visited loads, you know it really well, or you live there yourself, go to a specific memory. Tell her about the best time, the craziest time, the worst time, the last time you visited. Option 2, if you've never visited or never been there, but you kind of have an impression about what it might be like, say, I imagine. And then imagine a scene where you imagine her in her hometown, home city, or home country and what she would be doing. Step 3, you have no idea. Just say, I have no idea, and then give a specific memory and a specific detail about where you're from. This will really help to build the conversation. Most importantly, though, you are choosing to speak to her in a way that is original, which is different to how other guys are going to be speaking to her. So she should be impressed by the fact you're showing your individual character. You're not trying to impress her. And you're also, by adding specific memories and details and sharing your imagination with her, you're actually giving enough points of connection where she should feel more comfortable to open up in return. So my point is, use the conversation tech. Don't get stuck on small talk, and remember what conversation is actually about. It's about playing to your strengths, talking about what you want to talk about, showcasing your originality, and also giving her an opportunity to really open up so you can listen to her and figure out who she is and what she's about. Awesome, and good news again, I've created yet another cheat sheet for this video. It's totally free and it's completely yours. All you need to do is click on the link below to get access to it. The cheat sheet gives you the specific examples clearly listed down that I've covered in this video for you. So you can go through them, you can learn them, so you never have to get stuck in boring and awkward small talk again. So if you want to claim my cheat sheet for free, click on the link below and enjoy having much more interesting conversations with her.